Jenny, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us today. I wonder if you could start off telling me a little bit about what you do, your role and who you work for.
Absolutely, it's lovely to be with you. So I have two kind of roles. I'm on the leadership team of a church in Westminster in Marylebone, and I'm also the main thing that I do is I'm the director of a charity called Connected Lives, and we were set up really out of a family support project that came out of the church as a charity in our own right, and we sort of exist to offer early help for parents and partners from an attachment and a sort of trauma-informed perspective. We have two hubs at the moment, one in North West London, one in Cambridgeshire, and we're like looking for committed partners to sort of build a network really, and we do all kinds of things. We do all the general things that lots and lots of people will know about, like drop-ins and visiting programs and all those kind of things, but the main thing that we do in particular are these targeted interventions which are called Circle of Security Parenting and Hold Me Tight groups for couples, and they really give parents and partners the sort of space to take a step back and think about their emotional needs of their kids and the emotional needs of their partner, and what stops us from responding to some of those legitimate needs. And when we get really stuck and we're hitting up against something, we don't really understand it. So we want to give all people, kind of no matter their background and no matter their history, the sort of opportunity to reflect and make changes if they need to. And we do that in conjunction with Westminster. So we work really closely with the perinatal mental health team and the North Westminster Family Hub. So I'm on the integrated leadership team of the Family Hub, so we meet every other week and to just try and work in a really joined up manner, I suppose.
Well, that sounds like really, really valuable work. How did you get involved with working with Westminster Council?
Well, when we first started doing Circle of Security Parenting, I felt like, gosh, this is such a good program. It was like popular with parents, and it was also not just helping the worried well, because often parenting programs are full of people who are doing a brilliant job, you know, and they like thinking about it, but the people who might be struggling actually don't necessarily come along to groups. But we were finding that there were the people who probably had the most significant struggle were actually getting the most help out of it. So I kind of thought, well, this might be useful for Westminster. So I approached them and said, hi, you know, and we were working directly out of the church at that time. I said, hi, this is who we are, and this is Circle of Security Parenting, and it's an evidence-based program, and you can find all the evidence online, etc., etc. And we wondered if you'd be interested in sort of partnering with us. And I had a really lovely meeting and a very polite thank you, but sort of no thank you response. You know, we have our own parenting programs, thanks. Sounds great, but it's not something that we're particularly interested in pursuing because we're really busy doing, you know, all the stuff that we're doing. And I do think for churches, we need to appreciate that local authorities are, you know, they have a huge responsibility in terms of the families they're working with, their vulnerable families. They need to trust us, and it's not a given that, you know, here you are, you're from a local church, okay, I was a child protection social worker, but you know, it's kind of like, well, we don't really know you. So there is a level of trust that we sort of have to build up. So we sort of, I think I have a gift of just politely not going away. It's one of my gifts in life. And so I would just every now and again, I'd send them a little email going, oh, just to let you know, we've done X number of groups and worked with X number of parents. And then in 2014, I happened to be standing next to sort of the head of parenting procurement, or I don't exactly know his title. And we were at the launch of a report, which was called Conception to Age 2, the first 2001 days. So it was really looking at how fundamentally important the early years were, and how fundamentally important attachment was, and how we needed to sort of develop preventative programs that help people and help parents really when their children were really little, at the time all their brains were forming, etc. And so Circle of Security was listed as an intervention that they had evidence behind it to show that it basically helped promote secure attachment, which is the thing everyone wants. And so the very nice man, he looked at me and he said, oh, Circle of Security Parenting, you know, is that what you do? And I said, well, it is actually. And he said, oh, well, I don't think we do anything like that. And I said, oh, well, you know, maybe. And he said, well, do you think we could partner with you? I said, I think that's a really good idea. So sort of from that point onwards, we began to work, you know, we just, you know, a little bit of working together, and Jane Birkin in particular was incredibly helpful, and it's really sort of strengthened and developed, particularly with the family hubs bit coming online, because I think that sort of almost inviting partnership. So as I said, now I'm on the integrated leadership team. We deliver circular security groups. Westminster refer people to us. They also advertise them. They've trained probably about another 40 practitioners in the approach from Westminster, and so they deliver it out of their 3 hubs, and I sort of try and support that as and where I can. So it's kind of, it feels like it's really grown and developed as a partnership.
What a great story of how that came about. So what's it like working with Westminster Council now?
I would say it feels like it's hopefully, I mean, it'd be good to hear from them too, but it feels quite mutually beneficial in a way. It's a good partnership. We're not trying to be the council. We're trying to do the bit that we're trying to do. We couldn't work with the level of vulnerability that a lot of our colleagues work with in Westminster. So, they're working on their bit. We're trying to support our bit, and we're trying to mutually, we've got the same goals. And I think quite often as churches, we might be a bit fearful of local authorities and think, oh gosh, what are they like? What do they want? But actually they want to support families, and they want to support family life, and they want to try and help. Well, that's not a million miles away from what we're trying to do if we're really passionate about helping in our community as churches. So sort of accept that, we're mutually supportive, I would say, and it gives us access to families that we might not otherwise have access to. It gives us sort of advertising. It gives us, I guess, a degree of credibility for people who would no way would they come into a church. But if Westminster recognise it, then it's okay. It's kind of really pushed us as well, I think, to evidence what we do. So, I think quite often we think, oh, I know it's helpful. Why do we have to do all these forms, and why do we have to do all this analysis and evaluation? And I don't like forms, I really don't. But actually, it's kind of made us do it. And now we have this sort of body of evidence in terms of pre and post measures that we use, etc., etc. So that really helps us too. And for Westminster, I'd like to think they get quite a high quality service at a relatively very low cost in terms of what we're delivering. And I think the final thing, which is always good for churches to remember in particular, and probably local authorities, is that churches are consistently there. So as I said, we're setting up a hub in Cambridgeshire, and I wasn't quite sure how much to mention the church connection, just because you're never quite sure of the territory and the level of, whether people are going to think that's a good thing or a bad thing. So I sort of punted it a little bit, and they said, oh, we love working with churches because they're consistently there. And I thought, that's really interesting. That's, it's not necessarily a sort of a given. So I think we have all those things that that we can benefit one another.
That is so interesting. Thank you so much for those insights. Any last tips that you'd like to share with everyone?
I think the challenges we are facing now, I mean, I like every other organisation working with families in the pandemic was a whole other level of stress and distress and poor mental health and anxiety, and and you could just see the need. It really was a question of, we need everyone. So if you're in a church and you feel like, I want to do something, I would say anything is good. We need to be brave, we need to partner, and we need to try and kind of do what we can. Do your research, find out what your aims of your local authority are, what in terms of families, what are they going for, how could you help them meet any of it, because then they will really love you, because you're not posing an issue for them, you're helping them solve the thing that they have set themselves to do. And I think probably don't despise that, even the sort of things that we feel like, well, everyone does that. So I was at a infant mental health conference, and there was lots of brilliant keynote speakers, but they were also really good because they got service users to come along and talk about their experience, their lived experience. So they had a mum who had quite severe postnatal depression, and she was basically talking about a time she was feeling so awful. She left her house, and she gets to a junction, and she can either go left and she will go to the river and she will commit suicide, or she will go right and she will go to the church toddler group. Always get a bit emotional in this story. And she said, the reason I'm standing here today is because I turned right. Now, I don't know if that church toddler group ever knew, actually. But they had provided a space of kindness, and it was consistent, and she knew it was going to be there. And those things actually make such a big difference to people's lives. I just think, get involved, do it up to your skill set, but get involved. And I think there's a kind of open door. It feels like with the family hubs, there's more of an open door. So I just encourage people to walk through it.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Jenny. Such a privilege to talk to you today. Thank you.